Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome, and it is Traveler Tuesday. Today we're going to have a look at another newish release from Mongoose Publishing, Solomani Front. This is this is one of those new double sector books that they've been doing that I've been very generally happy with. This one covers the Solomani Rim and the Alpha Crucis sector. The book is written by longtime Traveler stalwart writer Martin Doherty. Let's take a look at context. So here on TravelerMap.com we have kind of most of charted space in the shot here. Here is the Third Imperium, and directly to rimward of the Third Imperium is the Solomani Sphere. In the official Traveler universe, the Solomani are the original humans from Terra. Additional human species were transplanted roughly 300,000 years ago by the ancients, and those include a couple of really important ones, including but not limited to the Villani and the Jodani, but also the Gianni and the Sileans and a bunch of other ones. But the Solomani have pride, possibly to a fault, in being the original humans from Terra or Earth. The two sectors that the book covers here are the Solomani Rim, which has been, since the Solomani Rim War, mostly controlled by the Third Imperium, and includes Terra, which is under Imperial rule, and the Alpha Crucis sector right here, which is still mostly Solomani. So let's hop back to the book and start paging through it. So if I didn't say this already, the book clocks at 314 pages. That's pretty beefy. So we start out with an introduction, which gives us some real high-level information. We get overview of the Solomani Front, which is these two sectors. We get people of the Solomani Front, which it starts with humanity, spelled with an I is the way that we do that in Traveler. With the Solomani, we also get a discussion of the Villani, Imperial and Starfaring culture humans, which is the dominant, ethnic mix of the Third Imperium anyway. We have the Selenites, who are genetically engineered humans that are present in various places. And you can see they're genetically engineered to be effective in low gravity. We have aquamorph humans, same thing, except they are genetically engineered to be aquatic, and these are not new entries into the Traveler universe. These folks have been around for a while. We also have a bunch of Aslan. The big one are going to be the Vegans, of not really of Vega, but that's what they're called. You can call them the vegans. I think most people will probably call them vegans, but I'm not sure they're actually vegans. They might be. The Vegans might be vegans. We have a section on non-humans, though. And we have discussions of Aslan, Droin, Hivers. Hivers you're really only going to see if they're like visitors. Aslan, there's probably a few in this area. Droin says they're only on one word. Killinur in the Harlequin subsector. And then we've got minor races and uplifted animals, which is a thing, including dolphins, that has happened in the Traveler universe as well. We even get rules for creating uplifted ape travelers, which is pretty neat. Somewhere there's rules for dolphins too. I'm not sure if they're in this book or not. We have the Gurungan, which are a minor race. They are a deep-sea aquatic race resembling a blind octopus. We have a picture of them. Here they are. Yes, they are mean-looking, octopi-looking dudes. The Weaven, resembling flat-topped cones or steep-sided barnacles. These are actually Sophont races, not suitable for travelers, however. And what about the Gurungans? Doesn't actually set. No, there's rules for generating travelers as Gurungans as well. And then we have the Ladybugs. These are a minor race native to the Alpha Crucis sector. And we have Traveler generation rules for them as well. Short discussion of major languages. I've pointed out before, this is not a strong suit of development of the Traveler universe, but we're just going to ignore it, and it certainly works fine in play. So, as I pointed out, the majority of the Solomani Rim sector is in Imperial control, and that includes the Vegan Autonomous District, and the entire Sol subsector. So this chapter is talking about the Imperial presence there. This is a bit of a powder keg. The Solomani themselves have kind of always been represented as sort of moving along the edge of sort of this sort of quasi-communist, quasi-fascist ethno-state, and you can drive that whichever direction you would like. And I don't think the book takes a strong position either way. But it is very easy to villainize these guys. So it is very tempting to do that. And this book gives you kind of everything you need to do that. It gives you all their ships, and you can generate Solomani characters and not play it that way too. But here we're talking about the Imperial presence. Here's a chapter about or a little section about the Archduke of Sol. This is Kieran Langos Adair, whose seat is in Diaspora. Strategic stance and doctrine, nice to see that. Imperial military rule, beefy sections on these things. Imperial intelligence, including Imperial naval intelligence and the Imperial Navy. There's a substantial Imperial fleet presence here. Here is a landscape map of both sectors that show you exactly where the Imperial fleet presence is, which is also nice to have. And I think there's a key here somewhere. Yeah. So these are couriers, and these are cruisers and escort vessels. So this tells us where those fleets are based, which is useful. And then we have the smaller subsector fleets as well. You notice that the Capella and Gemini sectors, which are just, they're mostly Solomani, still have subsector fleets, and those are probably relatively beefy too, because they are right on the border. We have a section on the Imperial Army, colonial and planetary armed forces. Confederation territory. This is the Solomani Confederation, the government that would love to be based out of Terra, but it isn't right now. Controls about a quarter of Solomani Rim and most of Alpha Crucis. And it is again a loose organization. This is the kind of interstellar government that is kind of favored in Traveler for, I think, pretty good reasons, mostly because of the way FTL works. It takes a long time for information to get from place to place. So decentralized governments are favored, especially if the interstellar state is a big one, and the Solomani sphere is a big one. Strategic stance and doctrine. Solomani security, or Solsec. These dudes are super easy to villainize. One might say they are probably pretty villainous out of the box. Here's a map of the Alpha Crucis sector. And there's these little, autonomous or important areas. This is the consolidation of Turin. I'm not sure what's up with that. Here's the Solomani Confederation Navy. And here's a breakdown of where they have fleets. I would have put all this on the same map, personally, because then you'd have been able to see, without flipping from page to page, what fleets are opposing what fleets, and you'd have saved a whole page. So I'd have put this all on the same page. Confederation Army and Marines. Home forces, which are sort of the local forces in Confederation space. Confederation culture, internal communications. Here is a piece about the Solomani philosophy, about Solomani humans being the best humans. Again, you can spin this how you want, but it is easy to make these guys the bad guys for this kind of reason. Astrographic and political factors, which include astrographic and political factors. So here's a little section on the Boeotian Confederation, the Gemini Rift, the Jardin cluster systems. I'm probably mispronouncing some of these, but who cares? It's a fictional setting. Kukulkan Economic Zone, the Thetis Laputa Coalition. Here's another astrographic and political factors inside the Solomani space. Here's the Transcrucis Main. That's very interesting. It'd be nice to dissect this map. Here's the Near Boeotes Trade War, the Orichalc Gateway. Here's the consolidation of Turin, a close association of member governments. Member governments, I think, means worlds in this case. Centered on Turin and Alpha Crucis, functions as a military and political alliance, and is highly influential outside its official borders. So there's a little bit of an answer there. Here's a bunch more of these things. The Rim Hawks, the Rim Purists. These are factions within the Confederation Party faction. There is the Solomani Party. I'm not sure if it says whether it's a single party state or not, but certainly if you would like to advance your career, membership in the Solomani Party is the way to go. And we all know in which governments that kind of dynamic was at play. But there's a bunch of these movements, some of which are fairly small, some of which are very big and influential. Getting into the ships, there's going to be some ships. I'm glad to see these have kind of their own look. That's nice. We've got some discussion of what all the different sort of overall classes of ships mean. A lot of folks might not know this kind of stuff from just naval history, and it doesn't map 100% to Traveler, although it's fairly close. Like, you know, the definition of a battle cruiser here is pretty similar to the historical definition of a battle cruiser. But that might not always be the case. So this will be good reading for folks who are a little less familiar with that, maybe folks who didn't come into this from the wargaming side of things. Army-Navy Joint Operations. This is Confederation Army-Navy, of course. Here is the Kestrel Aerospace Fighter at TL-14. This is probably at or near the limit of what the Solomani Confederation can muster. It is a 15-ton fighter craft with 2 seats. I gotta say, don't see a point in giving you a deck plan on this. You get in, there's a seat, you get out, that's it. You're not walking around in corridors or anything like that. Here is the Strike Boat. This is a 75-ton small craft, so this is fairly big. This I could see you getting a deck plan for. This is books old enough, was written long ago enough that we're still on the older orthographic deck plans here, which, as I've said before, I don't favor. I think they're hard to use in actual play. I much prefer the top-down deck plans. Here's the Mercury-class courier vessel. It's a 300-ton vessel, so it's a super jumped-up scout courier, and it is a TL-14 ship as well. We're getting into like significant fleet ships. This is a Daring class fleet destroyer, and we've got a random comma placed in here, so I don't know whether to interpret that as 5,000 tons or they left out a 0 and it's actually 50,000 tons, but it looks like 5,000 tons to me based on the deck plan, I'd say. Guessing that. You could totally figure that's a typo. Unfortunate. You could totally figure that out from the ship, but if you dug into the specs here, but I'm not going to do that here today. But that clouds the waters a wee bit. Here is more Daring class fleet destroyer, it looks like. I'm guessing 5,000. I don't think that's a 50,000 ton ship. Here is the Murat class, or a Murat class for those of us who are into the Napoleonic thing. Battle monitor, 100,000 tons. These are going to be big ships. Anything called a monitor is a big ship. I think that the term monitor means something specific in Traveler. Am I remembering this correctly? That this vessel may not have a jump drive. I believe I am. So monitor's basically a big, heavy punching ship that if it had a jump drive would be a battleship or maybe a battle cruiser, but it isn't. So, or maybe a heavy cruiser, but it isn't. So it's a monitor instead. The Mountain class logistics barge is 100,000 tons. This is the kind of thing that becomes like a fleet, is part of your fleet to carry supplies and repair crews and things like that. Deck plans of that. The Zwiho class light carrier. Wargamers are going to have fun with the ship names here. 25,000 tons. We have how many fighters? Actually doesn't say in the crew, but it's going to be somewhere in the somewhere in here is going to tell us. Launch tubes. We may have 16 fighters, which is probably roughly the fighter complement of this craft. It actually should tell us the number of pilots here somewhere. There's 220 gunners, so the vast majority of the crew are gunners. So that's interesting, but not really all that surprising. Remember, computer tech and Traveller is maybe a little undeveloped as sci-fi settings go, and really that is an artifact of the fact that the game was designed in 1976 and 1977. And we had, less of an idea of how computers would develop at that time. The new Mongoose Traveller 2nd Edition goes a long ways to remedy that. But you still, it still can feel a little weird sometimes. Here is the Carno-class naval tender at TL-14, 250,000 tons. This is a very big ship. And some tender-type vessels are intended to be basically carriers for, like not fighters, like decent-sized ships that are little monitors or system defense boats or things like that don't have jump drives of their own. So if they need to move from system to system, they board the tender jumps them to the new system, and then they deploy from there. This may be that type of tender as well. I'm not sure, and I'm not going to be able to tell here. Interesting looking ship. There is definitely like a cohesive look. It looks like they probably had one artist do all of the art, which is good. Here is the Vegan Autonomous District section. These are very interesting aliens that do not get along. They get along reasonably well with the Imperials, at least nowadays, but they are a little pissed at the Solomani because the Solomani didn't treat them well when they were part of the Solomani sphere. But then again, the Volani didn't treat them all that well when they were part of the First Imperium. So, thus the Vegan Autonomous District. You can make travelers of this species, and they're actually pretty cool. They seem pretty limited to this area, so it might feel weird if you like put this kind of character in the Spinbird Marches, for example. No reason you couldn't do that. It would just be unusual, and certainly player characters can be unusual. We've got a bunch of interesting new event tables for vegan characters during character creation. Here is a glossary. Here is a little section called High Guard Vegans, which are, I'm going to switch back and forth between vegans and vegans this entire time, and I already have. So this is giving us tools using the High Guard ship construction system to make vegan spacecraft and starships. And there's probably a couple of ships here, too. XX, Vegan Interface for Transport, 60-ton small craft. Vegan Vessel, Kilduar class, TL-13, 1,600 tons, so good-sized ship. Not a traveler-suitable ship, like the kind of ship that you would give to a party, right? As like a free trader, or maybe up to the size of like a mercenary cruiser or something like that. Unless your campaign is like a long-running campaign and they've worked their way up and that kind of thing. Certainly certain types of campaigns might result in the players having more ship access than other types of campaigns. This is not the kind of thing you'd give to players like right off the bat, I think. Unless you had a very theme-centered campaign that was set up around this, I suppose that would be fine. Traveler, of course, is super versatile. I mean, you can run whatever you want in it. And in a way, that's kind of a flaw because you have to put a central pitch into your campaign. Your mercenaries or your merchants or your intelligence agents or whatever. All of that is equally well supported in Traveller, and you kind of have to put it in by yourself. So the game has never really given you, with the possible exception of Traveller of the New Era, which is kind of its own thing, the game has never really given you, like, this is what your game is about. And a lot of games now, maybe almost all games that are released now, do that out of the box. So corporate bodies and non-state organizations, so including some mega corporations, probably all of which are the ones that we're familiar with. So we have Delgado, General Products, Hortalez et Sea, which I've always loved the name of, Instalarms, Ling Standard Products, Makaradon, which is old Volani bureau that turned into a mega corporation. Same with Nasirka and Sharushid, Stern Metal Horizons, Susag, Transstar, Tukara Lines, Zinkur, another Volani mega corporation. Of course, again, you know, the Wargamers might recognize the name Hortalez at Sea here. So you may amuse yourself with that reference if you like, or just Google it. Stella Polaris Freightliner, a 1,000-ton freight carrying ship. At some point, we'll do a video on economics of the official Traveler universe, and I am probably not the person who is super duper qualified to do that. I did take a college economics class, but that's it. But there's a lot of economic mechanics in Traveler, and I don't mean necessarily that it's super complicated. It has been in a couple of places. But if you look at Classic Traveler, for example, or Mongoose Traveler, there's rules for trading. That is a thing that almost no other game does. No other RPG does, really. The old GURPS Traveler Far Trader tried to turn that into a complete economic simulator. And it probably was the closest to really making that idea work. At some point, when we do that video, we'll circle back to that. So here is a construction platform. It is a robotic platform. We're still into smaller corporations here now, at this point. So that is a product. Sachs Transport, Solomani Chemicals, Solomani Military Studies, Thinking Machines Incorporated, TL13 Plus Expert Systems. Wonder what the TL cap in Solomani space is. For the Third Imperium, it's pretty much 15, but there's at least one planet I can think of that is officially TL 16. So it is not impossible to find TL 16 stuff. It's just super duper uncommon, super uncommon. And often restricted, because the Empire doesn't necessarily want this crazy technology floating around, at everybody's behest. So I think that the Solomani Confederation tops out at 15, without the caveat that there's probably a TL 16 planet somewhere too. But I'd have to actually do that research, and that's something you can do on Traveler Map actually. More corporations. Here's a Crusader Super Heavy Tank, which is ground vehicles if you need that. If you're going to do the mercenary campaign, I've already mentioned, not in this video, but I've mentioned elsewhere, and we did a video on it, that Mongoose released a huge Kickstarter package of mercenary stuff. All of that stuff has already showed up, so check that video out if you want. Here's more political and cultural movements in the Solomani front area. Criminal, paramilitary, and insurgent groups. Boy, you could get a lot of. Every one of these is a campaign hook. To be completely honest, the Phoenix Project, which is a cute referential name, and here we get into the first of the two sector treatments. Okay, here is our one-page map of the Solomani Rim sector with a whole bunch of stuff marked on it. And we're going to get here the standard Mongoose treatment of sectors, which is kind of to do it subsector by subsector, which is, all Traveler has always done it that way. And then give you, and we'll see how it works here. We have some astrographic, some details like the rim main, the rimward gap, the Dingir sparse. We have some base codes here. We have to get Solomani base codes here in addition to the Imperial ones. Here is history of the Solomani Rim. We'll get to the subsector by subsector treatment in a minute. And the history of the official Travel universe is really at the interstellar polity level is really, really rich. So as expected, we are getting a big chunk of history here. And I always find this very interesting to read, but then again, I'm a history guy, so you may find it drier than I do, but I don't find it particularly dry. And I think toward the end here, we're getting a timeline which goes from the ancients visiting Terra all the way up to Vegan polity achieves independence. If I were to use this, actually all the way up to 1104, so the current date in most of this Mongoose Traveler second edition stuff, and really Mongoose Traveler first edition too, is 1105. So it's kind of golden age. It's more or less the classic Traveler era. So, all right, now we're going to get subsector by subsector. So what we're going to get is a discussion of the situation in the subsector. We're going to get a table with all the UWPs and allegiances and trade codes and all that jazz. We're going to get a subsector map, which is relatively pretty. If you order the book, it will come with two, might be one back-to-back maps, big poster maps of the sectors. Obviously, I don't have that to show off, but if you buy it, if you order it from Mongoose, you get the PDF, and there is a separate file, which I will pull up. So here is the Solomani Rim sector poster map. These are, when you get the physical ones, these are nicely printed on sort of a glossy paper. It's kind of thin paper, but not super duper thin. They kind of eschewed the traditional Traveler presentation, which is to kind of make them in black. And I think that's probably for readability because, like, all the information is on here. All the UWPs are on here, which wasn't traditionally the case with, like, the old GDW Spinward Marches map. So I think that's probably why. But nevertheless, they look good. And you can, of course, if you're running a campaign in this sector, boom, put this on the wall or put it on your gaming table under a piece of plexi. Your players can mark on it. Put it in actually, I wouldn't do it that way. I would put it in a poster frame. And I'll let your players write on it with dry erase markers or whatever, and then you pull up that poster frame and put it away, between sessions. That is totally what I will do next time I run a face-to-face Traveler campaign, which hopefully will be happening, it ain't next week, but soon. That'd be great. Here's Alpha Crucis, of course. So we get two of these. So, man, there's a lot of material here. So back to the book. So we get, Ultima Subsector is our first subsector A of Solomani Rim. We get the discussion of the Ultima Subsector. We get the UWP table. We get the map. And then we will usually get between 2 and 4, maybe 5 individual systems that we will get a relatively extensive discussion on. And then the rest of the systems will be just UWP codes, and you, the referee, get to determine what's going on in those systems. Some people just want the UWP because part of the joy of Traveler is kind of discovering the weird exotic things on these planets based on interpretation of the UWPs. That's what the UWPs are for. So some people resent you getting a giant pile of information about some of those systems. Other players kind of want, like, hey, I want information on all the systems. And almost no Traveler books have done that. Really, the only one to do a sector that way was the book Behind the Cloth from Steve Jackson Games for GURPS Traveler. There have been 2 books, I think, from Mongoose called Behind the... maybe only one, which does it just like this. That's for Mongoose Traveler 2nd edition. We've already looked at that book. Go look at that video if you want. Mongoose Traveler 2nd edition tries to split the difference, where it gives you 2 to 4 planets, maybe 5 sometimes, but lets you do what you want with the rest of the subsector. And I actually feel like that's a good balance, because I want some meat to start with, but then I also want to experience the joy of discovering, hey, here's this weird thing happening on this planet based on my interpretation of the UWP at the time that the players are approaching their landing zone. And that's part of why narrative emerges naturally from Traveler, from player interaction and the results of the die rolls and all that stuff. It's what makes Traveler magical, one of the magical ingredients of Traveler. So we kind of get the best of both worlds, I think. Some people disagree with that. They want all one or all the other, but I'm very happy with the way Mongoose has been doing this. So here in the Ultima subsector, we've got 1 planet, 2 planets, 3, 4 planets. We've got a section on Catanian white fever. There really is a need, by the way, for a like consolidated Mongoose Traveler Master Index so that you can find all this stuff. Hey, here's a section on this disease. It's buried in one of the sector books. It would be super useful to have a like really well done consolidated Mongoose Traveler Master Index. It would be also really hard to do because Mongoose really supports Traveler very well. There's a lot of product coming out, so just catching up to where they are would be a big task. Let alone let alone keeping up with new material. So here's the subsector capital of Thamber. Here's another random 300-ton ship. System defense boat. By the way, if it's called a boat, it is probably not jump capable. If it is called a ship, it is probably jump capable. That is part of the Traveler parlance. Here is High Guard. So when we see these little High Guard sections, what that's giving us is extra rules for building ships rather than ships themselves, although sometimes ships' designs show up in these things. So this is actually telling us how to have a starship that accommodates aquatic species. So this is actually really cool. Here is the Solomani subsector. We get 3, 4, 5 worlds here too. Concord. World Easter. The Soul Moon of the Brown Dwarf Eshkarun. That sounds pretty cool. That sounds super, super atmospheric. Harlequin subsector. I'm not sure we even knew that there were brown dwarfs in 1977. So, the game system, one of the reasons I think to pick Mongoose Traveler as opposed to Classic Traveler is some modernization of the sort of astronomical, rather. Don't throw stones at me for that. That was just a Freudian slip. The astronomical modernization that has taken place of a lot of the science behind the game. Actually, the computers are another one. We see here's a world called Miskatonic. One wonders if we get detail on that. Looks like no. Here's one called Scaramouche, which is a pretty fantastic name. We don't get Miskatonic, so you're free to interpret that planet's atmosphere however you like. The Alderamin subsector. We're getting deeper into the book. Here is the Ice Crawler, a critter from one of these planets. Another thing that would be useful to just have is like an index to all the weird critters that have shown up. There's a lot. Right? There's really a lot. Esperance. This I think is a legitimate thing you can nick Traveler for is organization, and this has been the case. It certainly was the case with Classic Traveler, to a lesser extent with Mega Traveler, and has definitely been the case with Mongoose Traveler 2nd Edition, where there isn't like, hey, here's an alien creatures book that contains all the alien creatures. So if I need an alien creature, I can grab the alien creatures book, find one, and here we go. Instead, there's alien creatures in all over the place. In the Journal of the Traveler's Aid Society, which Mongoose has resurrected, which they're doing a fabulous job with, and I'm very happy, but it's hard to find this stuff. Hey, here's all the ship designs. Well, there's ship designs all over the place. Hey, here's all the diseases, right, that we just ran across. That's why I think there would be a real need for a master index. Anyway, Esperance here. Bellerophon system. Human-populated water world within the Vegan Autonomous District. That's interesting. That's got to be some interesting dynamics. Here's these kind of island animals. These are interesting. Be interesting to see. So this is like a classic sea monster type of thing. It'd be curious to see the ecology of this. This is the Dagadasi. I can usually at least credibly pronounce fantastic names, but I may stumble over them at least the first couple of times. So I'd be very curious to examine the ecology here. Hunter foil. This is a looks like a hydrofoil vessel. There's the world of Esperance, Ludmilla. Here's the you figure out where the inspiration to this particular shot is, but we won't have to search very hard. Here's the Vega subsector. Is the star Vega here? It isn't, and I didn't think it was. It's just named after Vega, It might be Vega might be here actually because Vega's not that far away. Vega's only like 26 or 30 or something like that light years away. So it actually might be here. That's possible. It's a pretty bright star. You might remember it from Contact. It was a plot point in the movie Contact. It was a great movie. You should watch it. The Great Crested Jabberwock. That's pretty cool. Mongoose. This is the homeworld of the Vegans. Yeah, okay. Here is the blue-white Class A star Vega, fifth brightest in Terra's sky. Solar system has no planets, but has a large debris disk of dust, because it's a very young system. Also a plot point of Contact. And a double asteroid belt rich in exploitable materials. Banastan. I don't know. That's how... You know, your guess is as good as mine. So we get systems here. Submersible personal transport. Water worlds are pretty common in Traveler, so... there's a good reason to have like a lot of that kind of gear. And I want to say that Game Lords did a book on the undersea environment back in the day. Hopefully y'all got in on the Game Lords bundle of holding with all the old Game Lords Traveler stuff, which was very good stuff. And the Cargonaut Press stuff, which was the Keith Brothers Lost Supplements material, a lot of which was centered around the Reaver's Deep sector. And pretty much all of the development of that sector, Reaver's Deep, is either out of Dark Nebula, the board game, or out of those lost supplements from the Keith brothers. I could do a whole video on the Keith brothers, one of whom William H. Keith is still around and a writer now. Well, he was a writer before, but he's a novelist now. And J. Andrew Keith has unfortunately passed away. So, and they did just so much work to flesh out the Traveler universe that GDW couldn't contain their output. So they also did stuff for Game Lords, and they were like the Martin J. Doherty of their day. Let me put it that way. Here's the planet Dingir. You can make fun of the name if you like. High G takeoffs and landings. Okay, this is cool. That this is here, but this, I'd love to have the reference for this, right? So prepare to have a giant library of this material. Here's the Soul Sector. We finally get to the Soul Sector. We see close by here is Prometheus, which I believe is Alpha Centauri, and Barnard, which is both of these Class A starport at Prometheus, Class B at Barnard, Class A at Terra. This is occupied territory, occupied by the Third Imperium. And, possibilities for campaigns here are absolutely rife. Generally speaking, you could take any one of these well-developed planets like Terra and set an entire campaign there. I don't know that you want to, because part of Traveler is traveling, but that does kind of mean that you could have an entire campaign in a single subsector and never have to worry about needing more. A sector's better, maybe, or certainly more, but a subsector is more than sufficient. Meson guns, don't know why we have this discussion here, but it's cool to see it. That's not rules, though. That's just a couple of paragraphs on it. Here is the planetary map of Earth with big cities, which are not labeled, which is irritating, but I guess you could label them yourself. Starports, mining. So we've got how many starports here? We've got one in what looks like the southwestern United States, one on the coast of North Africa. I see one in Australia. Whoops. I guess Baikonur Cosmodrome's out of the loop by 4,000 years from now. So, but that's okay. And we get a lot of detail on this, as you could kind of expect. You get a big section on Luna. I wonder, actually, looking at this, if this Luna material is drawn from Mark Miller's old article on the moon in the Traveler universe. It might be. And I would be very curious. I think I have access to that article. It was in the Ares section of Dragon Magazine back in the day, back when there was an Ares section and a Dragon Magazine, for that matter. And it was actually a good series of articles about the moon in various sci-fi RPG systems. It's going to be a long one, folks. We're not even into Alpha Crucis yet. Here is the Arcturus subsector. So we're going to try and move a little faster here. The Heraklion Dagger. Unusual in that it has a 90-degree hooked tip, much like some cargo knives, and is sharp on the false edge rather than the usual primary cutting edge. Okay, that's interesting. It's kind of cool. This would be a cool, if your character carries a knife around, it could be one of these as an interesting, character point. The Jardin subsector. The planet Krypton. Probably a bit different than you might initially assume. Here is the Capella subsector. We're almost to the end of the Solomani Rim here. We've got some Imperial Solomani border here as well. Waldgeists. These interesting looking sort of chameleon / primates. That's pretty cool. The Gemini subsector, Bright Star, named for the bright stars Castor and Pollux, which are apparently, at least Pollux is here. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how far those are from our solar system, but apparently they've already done the research for me. But that's not like don't look too hard for that kind of stuff. Because it's a 2D universe, remember, and there's like an in-universe explanation for that, but it's still a 2D universe. The water world of Hamilcar, New Green Pernt, settled by Solomani colonists in the 880s. Okay, here's the Kukulkan subsector, subsector P. World of Kukulkan. This is a garden world settled during the Long Night. The planet Scipio. Yes, it is pronounced Scipio. I don't know if this planet is pronounced Scipio, but Scipio is pronounced Scipio. Alpha Crucis. Here is the Alpha Crucis sector. So this is the second of the 2 sectors in the book. We're going to blitz through this as fast as we can. Paraterraforming, a little section on that. That's nice. This is the kind of thing that'd be nice to put in the index, but, if you don't have it, it's just a discussion. So history, we're still in history. There's a lot of history. Again, I find this material rich and engaging, but you might find it dry. But it's certainly valuable background. Here is the Jimenez subsector, subsector A of Alpha Crucis with the map. Same type of treatment here, where we get some details on some of the worlds as well. We're going to buzz through this. Here's a ship. That doesn't want to work. Here is a weird critter that is a carnivorous mobile fungus. If it's singular, maybe it's collective. Or a calc subsector. Alva subsector. So there's a lot here, right? In general, like I said, you can absolutely run an entire campaign in one subsector very happily. But if you want larger context, or you're in a place like, if you're in, let's say, District 268, I think there's reasons why you would want to leave District 268 and go back to the main Imperium, for example. That's up in the Spinward Marches. So if you want an entire sector as context, it's traditional to have sector books in Traveller. Every edition of Traveller did one. They're not all equally useful, however. The classic Traveller sector books give you like literally a short paragraph on each subsector, and then it's just UWPs. There's like no detail on the worlds at all. The Mega Traveller did a book on the Diaspora sector, and it gives you more than the Classic Traveller books did. The Classic Traveller sector books from GDW were Spinward Marches and Solomani Rim, but then various third-party... GDW was very generous with third-party publishers, so I think Game Lords might have done one. Judges Guild did 4, and various other publishers did sectors too. So there's about a bunch of sectors out there floating around. I have all the Judges Guild subsector books, or sector books. They're not very good. They've pretty much been replaced by Martin Doherty's work at this point. And then, of course, later versions had sector books as well. We've always had like a Spinward Marches book. We've usually had a Solomani Rim book. The Mongoose Traveller 2nd edition is really trying to do as many sector books as possible, which is awesome. So the state books have one sector each in them. So the Third Imperium book, for example, has Core sector, and then this Behind the Claw has the Deneb and Spinward Marches sectors. The Spinward Extents has the Beyond and the Vanguard Reaches sectors. Then this book has Solomani Rim and Alpha Crucis. So we have a really good trajectory to like get a treatment of every sector. And I'll cut back to Traveler Map in a minute as soon as we finish flipping through the book. And I'll point out like the kinds of areas. Here is a larger, contextual map. Here is a larger contextual map of the sectors. Here is the subsector index. These are all the worlds that you get info on. And we're at the end of the book. So let me cut back to Traveler Map real quick. We've had like these sectors down here and these sectors up here, and we even have a book from the New Era edition for T20 actually called Gateway to Destiny. It's a Martin Doherty book too that covers Lay Sector, Gateway, Glimmer Reaches, and Crucis Margin. Those are the 4 sectors that were originally done as third-party products from Judges Guild. And Doherty cleaned all those up. It's not set in 1105 is the problem. It's set like 100 years earlier or something like that. But he really cleaned these up. And in fact, yeah, Traveler 5, Martin Doherty and Hunter Gordon, you can look and see, who did the sector details here. What we've never really had, like Vland sector, for example, I'm unaware that has ever appeared in a book. And that would be a super interesting sector to do. Antares, which is up against the Julian Confederation up here, would be a super interesting section to do, and I'm not aware that anybody's ever done it. Gushamega, which is down here, it's like a old imperial sector. Nobody really knows much about it because while there's been like information on it scattered here and there's never been like a sector book that's here's where you go. Here's the Lancian cultural region, and this is the Amek Protectorate. We've started having these like little zones in the Third Imperium on Traveler Map. I wish you could turn those off actually. So there's plenty of space here, and when we zoom all the way out to charted space as a whole, we see that there's an absolutely ludicrous number of these sectors to do. If you haven't figured it out already, the original development of this was they randomly computer generated all the UWPs for all of this. And that creates a lot of weird, in the classic Traveler days, there was a product for that called Atlas of the Imperium, which actually just gave you the dot maps. It didn't give you the UWPs. The new Atlas of the Imperium from Far Future Enterprises for Traveler 5th Edition does give you the UWPs, but there's a lot of weird artifacts in there. And like 2 months later, Mongoose launched the Spinward Extents book, which redoes the Beyond and Vanguard Reaches. If you're familiar with the original products from Paranoia Press, they got significant problems. The new book fixes that, but the new second survey book, released months earlier, has the old crappy Beyond and Vanguard Reaches information from Paranoia Press. So there's tons of room for expansion here. I am generally, could be faster. I'd be happy if it was faster. But generally speaking, I am very happy with the development that Mongoose Publishing has done with these books. I'm very happy with the overall direction of the line, as I've expressed many times, so we can do that too. So hopefully you have enjoyed this almost 50-minute video, this magnum opus, as it were, of Solomani Front. But there's a lot of material here, and a lot of other things to say about the material and about the context of the official Travel Universe. So hopefully you have enjoyed the video. Please do help to support the channel. Thank you, patrons, for helping to make this kind of content possible. Until next time, happy gaming.